You know, there's a lot of people who share this story about a place called the Winchester Mystery House. Does anybody know about this place? So there's a few of you who do, because you're from California, it has to be. So it turns out, after doing a little bit of homework, that there's a lot of pastors and priests that make sermons about this place. But I happen to have learned it from a rabbi named Ed Feinstein, also from the Los Angeles area. And the way he shared this with me was really in an interesting, really important context. And I think it's really significant to think about it as we move into these holy days, before Rosh Hashanah in particular. So apparently about an hour south of San Francisco stands this incredible spiritual landmark. And if you drive up a coast, you're going to see signs for the Winchester Mystery House. Now, it turns out that Sarah Winchester had married into the Winchester Rifle Factory. I keep thinking MASH, but it's not MASH. It's the Rifle Factory, a family. And when both, in sad situation, her husband and her child died, she became convinced that the family was cursed. And cursed by the spirits of all of those who had been murdered by these Winchester rifles. And a medium, a psychic, told her that the only way to escape these angry spirits was to go west, buy a house, and never stop building. I don't know who she was listening to, but that is exactly what this woman did. Mrs. Winchester abandoned her comfortable life, I believe in Connecticut, and she moved to California into this wilderness town area, purchased a 6-room farmhouse, and began a 50-year project of obsessive construction and reconstruction. At one time, the house contained over 300 rooms, with staircases that led to nowhere, closets inside of closets, and there were bizarre rooms of every shape and every dimension. Apparently, there was no architect. There was a builder, but there was no plan. And that was the plan, not to have a plan, and just to keep building this fakakta house. So this mistress and her bizarre mansion, the real part of the story, though, isn't the house. It's her in the house. She never invited anyone in. The story goes that she only spoke to a servant and her builder, and she was partially successful in her goals. She eluded death way into her 80s, but she also eluded life. Think about it. Building this maze of a home inside of a maze, going deeper and deeper into the same house, an odd architectural monument to eccentricity, and also a poignant reminder of how grief and fear can trap a human soul. I really pity Mrs. Winchester for all of the money that family had made, a real fortune. That's how she was able to build such a strange kind of a house that seemed to never end. But I feel badly for her, locked inside of this ever-expanding house, while her ever-growing pain is never going to be diminished. This sorrow continues. Deep inside of her, it must have been. And ironically, during the years of this effort to continue to build and build and build, a community grew around this home. If only she once opened the front door and invited her neighbors in for tea, to start a conversation. Maybe while she was living there, could she have opened that door and let all of the kids in these growing neighborhoods come and travel throughout the house and see who can get in and who can get out? If only Mrs. Winchester had believed that she wasn't alone in this world. Now, I think it's kind of a powerful story, and it's true. I think that there's a lot of people who still feel locked up in some ways, can even be the pharaohs for themselves in their own Egypts that they construct, just like this mystery house. I think that there's folks that have a hard time receiving any kind of help. And I know even from experience, it's no fun to be on the receiving end. We all prefer to be on the giving end. But if we're really a community, we should be able to give and receive. If we're really going to be in covenant with one another, have a real relationship with one another, and not just join congregations, then we show up in each other's lives, even when it's hard, when we're ready, maybe not at first. But we all, without exception, I believe, are going to have a special need at some point in our lives, most likely many points in our lives. And we're going to need to not lock ourselves up into our own mystery houses. If we do, we grow more isolated and more lonely, and then it's harder to find our way out. One of the things, since she came from Connecticut, in thinking about houses and what she left, I thought of my own first house that I bought in Trumbull, Connecticut. That was where my first congregation was after my ordination, the time of my life when I was thinking that I should have gone to law school instead. You remember that sermon? And the thing that I loved about this house, well, there was nothing about the house, but nobody had any fences. Nobody had fences in New England, it seemed. And even the town where I moved in after that, in Atlanta, in a town called Roswell, Georgia, for 9 years, I was there. Nobody, again, had any fences. Where I am now in Superior, they have big, tall fences. We have no idea who our neighbors are. And if you take a fence and you add an electric garage door opener, you have no idea who's in your neighborhood. It's so hard. And without those fences, when I'm mowing the lawn, I see my neighbors, not mowing his lawn. I can engage in a conversation. We can find out about each other's lives. Even in that kind of peripheral way, we know who our neighbors are. But I think those bigger and taller fences that homeowners associations mandate and that electric garage door opener has made so many of us build these mystery houses of our own, and we don't really come out. We don't really come out. The thing that I think is so important about synagogues is the thing that's the hardest. It's the hardest to ask of you. It's the hardest thing. It's to give a little bit of ourselves. I'm not talking about tzedakah. That's also a different sermon. I'm talking about giving a little bit, being present for somebody else. We have congregants that need some more help. We need help to give them help. And we also have folks that don't want any help because we've been trained to be so independent that we just make a bigger house with a stairway going nowhere, just like Mrs. Winchester. I think Americans have a harder time because of these walls and fences that are really everywhere. And I'm going to still hold on to that pity for Mrs. Winchester, who can't ask for help. I think we can help each other heal. I think by doing so, it helps us come out from an attic. Now, the rabbi that shared this story for me, Ed Feinstein, he told it in the context of his fight with colon cancer, which he had twice. And he taught this: healing means accepting the blessings of life, moving from despair to affirmation, from denial to acceptance to celebration. In healing, we learn to endure, to withstand the loss, and still fill life with meaning. Even in the face of death, we can affirm life. We can share blessings. Traditionally, like we just did, by the way, Jews pray for others who are sick. We pray for a refuah shlema, a healing of wholeness. Refuah shlema, a healing of wholeness. Shlema, from shalom. We don't seek a life without suffering. That's not the human condition. We pray for the wisdom and courage to embrace life in the very midst of death. These days coming are the days of awe, the days when we tremble just a little bit. It's a time to figure out who we are and where we're going, to get our house in order, and are we going to live a life that's full and rich, with meaning and good. Remember, Shana Tova, we always say it, it doesn't mean a Happy New Year. That's what we say for January 1st. Shana Tova, it should be a good year. One that's going to be filled with some challenges, to be sure, but it's going to be good. It's going to be an opportunity for us to accompany and take care of each other. And maybe we can give up on some of the independence that we've been taught to pursue as an idol in and of itself. Maybe we can pursue that interdependence the way God planned it all along. So,